And the UK economy grew better than expected in February at 0.5%. The expansion largely thanks to a strong manufacturing and service sector.
But will Donald Trump's tariff undo all of that if a trade deal with the US can't be reached? Joining us now is the Care Minister Stephen Kinnock. Good morning to you. So we have got better expected growth in February, which is good news, of course, but, 0.5%, it's still only very modest, isn't it? The government's strategy is all hanging on getting good growth. And we know at the moment with the global instability because of Donald Trump's tariffs, that all of that is up in the air. And actually, we have to brace ourselves for a negative impact, don't we, because of that?
Well, these growth figures are very welcome, higher than expected, I think, and it's been good to see the dividends from the work the government's been doing since July in terms of having that stability, having that focus on growth, getting wages up, which is boosting consumption, and bringing forward an industrial strategy, which is going to help us to rebuild our manufacturing sector. But you're right, Charlotte, that there's a huge amount of turbulence in the global system. And again, I think the Prime Minister has shown real leadership in terms of rebuilding bridges with the European Union after so many years of damaging incompetence from the Conservatives, and also keeping the links open to colleagues and partners on the other side of the Atlantic.
You say that, but we're still in the 10% group with everybody else at the moment, aren't we? We don't have any advantage on that. Kevin Hassett, the White House economic advisor, says that base 10% tariff is likely to remain in place for both countries. He said it will take something extraordinary for the president to lower that. So what are our chances, actually, realistically, of being able to get a better deal than others?
Well, the Prime Minister and the Trade Secretary are working really hard to get that prosperity deal, that economic prosperity deal with the United States, but they're also very focused on building bridges with our European partners and allies. Let's not forget that by some distance, the European Union is still our biggest trading partner. So we're getting the economy back onto an even keel. We're showing that Britain is back in terms of diplomacy and international politics and trade relations, and we're investing in our own country, building skills, building infrastructure, getting our energy policy right, so that Britain can stand more firmly on its own 2 feet in the extremely uncertain world in which we live.
The problem is, Minister, I mean, you're a realist. There is currently a trade war between America and China. The consequence of that is that if Chinese steel floods into the British markets or the markets we want to import our steel from, most importantly in your great constituency of Port Talbot, that will have a real-world impact on whether or not that a steel plant can stay open. So the simple question is, it looks like there's going to be the new green steel plant opening very happily in your constituency. As it currently stands, if demand goes down, is that steel plant under threat? We know it is in Scunthorpe. And if it is, what guarantees will you give those workers and consequently all of the people in your constituency and beyond the safeguard, the confidence that that's going to be built and jobs will be protected?
Well, a trade war benefits absolutely nobody. You're completely right about that. We reserve the right to both retaliate and also to put up trade defence measures. And when you see, and if we see, large amounts of steel coming from a country like China and being dumped on our markets, we must and we will bring forward trade defence measures with quotas and tariffs to push back against that, and that is something that the government is looking at.
You're considering retaliatory tariffs. You're considering retaliatory tariffs on China. The other option, bearing in mind people who are nervously sitting at home, worried about their jobs, especially in the steel sector, and most importantly, your own constituency. Would there be a time when the government might say, look, this is so bad, we need to protect our jobs, it's time to renationalise?
We are in negotiations, of course, with the Scunthorpe plant, and I live in a constituency which has gone through huge turbulence in terms of the change that you've just talked about, moving from blast furnace technology to electric arc furnace technology. And it's a testament to the incredible resilience of my community that we are working towards that now. It's very tough, and my heart goes out to the families and the steelworkers in Scunthorpe.
But the question is how...
challenging time.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but the question is how... Look, we've got to keep it simple. How scared are you about these jobs? There was a conversations with Tata Steel, right? You were, and the Labour Party were critical about the nature of that deal. Nevertheless, it means real-world jobs. Given what's happening in the world, those are under threat. So the simple question is, what are you going to do to protect those jobs in your constituency? And, of course, in Scunthorpe as well?
Well, we are moving towards a competitive, viable steel business here in the constituency, and that is going to be based on recycled steel made in one of the world's biggest electric arc furnaces, and I'm hoping that spades will be going into the ground in the summer on that. That is a vital way of protecting jobs, because the best way to protect jobs is to build an industry that works and that can stand on its own 2 feet. By the way, we export.
Sorry, you're not going to build it
if
the company. Excuse me, sorry. If the company withdraws because it can't make any money because there's a trade war going on and there's nothing the government has done to protect that business, you're not building anything. I mean, it's just a simple question. Well, looking down the camera, speaking to your constituency, what will the government do? And not language, but just very straightforward.
Well, the government's put £500 million into that electric arc furnace. It's a co-investment with Tata Steel, and we've also brought forward a number of other measures to support the workforce in terms of the transition. So this isn't just words, this is real action, government working in partnership with steel businesses to build an industrial strategy. Steel is a vitally important part of our economy, it's a foundational sector, and it's vital for our national security. So this government will do what it takes to ensure that we keep a steel industry in our country, but it should be based on partnership with a steel business that has got a vision for the future, and that is what we're working towards.
Listen, I know something else that you want to talk about, the fact that waiting lists are down, which is obviously good news. However, there are still millions of people on NHS waiting lists, aren't there? There are still record high waiting times for people to be treated in A&E. There are still people being treated on trolleys in corridors. The NHS is still in crisis, isn't it? And at the moment, it's people's health that is at risk because of it.
Well, when we took over in July, we said we would deliver 2 million extra elective appointments in our first year. I'm absolutely delighted that after 9 months we've smashed that target, 3.1 million today. Also 100,000 extra in terms of the 18-week referral to treatment target. We've reduced the waiting list by 219,000. Big progress in the right direction. By the way, all the measures that the Chancellor brought forward in October to make this possible were voted against by the Conservatives, Reform and Liberal Democrat parties. So they should be asked about how they would have generated the revenue to make all of this work.
Government, Minister.
But I accept that.
I mean, they're not going. I mean, still, just to be clear,
they keep on saying they welcome the investment, but they don't want to say how they would generate it.
Those waiting lists are still higher than pre-pandemic levels. Most people's in county got a 4-hour A&E target. Many people, you'll have spoken to some of them yourself, have a 12-hour wait on trolleys and A&E. We have countless people who tell us about that, family members as well. And I wonder if you're proud of this figure, that the NHS satisfactory score is the lowest since records began. You've been in office for a year. How do you explain that?
Well, I'd of course point out that when Labour left office in 2010, it was the highest since 1948. So what we've seen is 14 years of Conservative neglect and failure. But I absolutely accept that we are in a hole and we've got to dig ourselves out of that hole. The inheritance is dire, but we are straining every sinew to work towards getting 1,500 more GPs announced, 700,000 extra urgent dental appointments, waiting list down by 219,000. We're step by step. We're getting there.
Although,
I hope we're turning
one
that
of the big
corner,
problems.
but I absolutely accept that we're a long way from where we need to be.
Yeah, and one of the big problems, isn't it, is the number of people who are in hospital who could actually be somewhere else. You know, I think it's 1 in 7, isn't it, the figure now? in January. Beds were occupied in hospital by someone medically fit for discharge, but they didn't have anywhere to go because of the social care crisis. And the issue is that is only going to get worse, isn't it? With the impact of the changes to national insurance contributions, minimum wage, it means that things are going to get more difficult for those care homes, and therefore there's going to be pressure on those places. It's been called a doom loop. So actually, from that point of view, you're making the situation even worse.
Well, we do have a social care system that is facing massive challenges. We've invested an additional £3.7 billion into that system. We're bringing forward a fair pay agreement for care workers to address the fact that we've got over 100,000 vacancies. All of these things are going to take time to fix. We've brought forward the independent commission that will be chaired by Baroness Louise Casey that is going to put our care system back onto an even keel. But what we absolutely recognise is that if you've got large numbers of people who are medically fit for discharge in hospital and they're not being discharged, that is creating backlogs in the system. There's also a big piece around avoiding unnecessary admissions, and we're looking to invest more in community care so that people can be cared for at home and don't need to come into hospital in the first place.
Okay.
These are the measures to fix primary care, which is the front door of the NHS, and adult social care, which is so important in terms of this point around delayed discharge.
And as you said, making sure it's adequately funded as well. We watch this space. There are many care homes, as you know, that are closing down, worried about national insurance contributions being passed on to them. And if that happens, the people who are holding those beds aren't going anywhere.
We'll have to leave it there, though. Stephen Kinnock, Care Minister, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Thanks for your time.